She had an aneurysm in her brainstem, which is ground zero of the brain. You don't survive that. It controls blood pressure, heartbeat, swallowing, breathing, all the stuff that you do without thinking. And it was the basilar tip. It was ground zero of the brainstem that blew up. In December of 2005, Pastor Kraft started preaching on healing. And he preached healing Sundays and Wednesdays for 6 months. And I look back at that as the Lord preparing me for an upcoming battle that I didn't know about. On June the 10th of 2006, which was a Saturday, I'm sure you recall, he had called a prayer meeting for the church. And so the church was all up in there praying for half an hour. And afterwards, the praise team, of which CeCe was a member, were going to practice. And I was running the soundboard that night. And in the middle of the third song, CeCe put down her microphone and picked up her finger like this and stepped off the stage. And I knew that wasn't right. And so I ran up to her and said, "Babe, what's going on?" And she goes, "It hurts so bad." And I ran outside and said, "Cliff, come in here." And he came in, and CeCe was just about to collapse into a coma. And he said, "Come out of her, you filthy devil." And then he looked at me and he said, "I think you need to get her to the hospital." And I said, "Cliff, I don't know where it is." I wasn't from Elberton. And he said, "Follow me." And so I put my 8-year-old daughter and CeCe's 6-year-old daughter in the back seat of my truck. And I picked up the nearly lifeless body of my wife and put it in the front seat. She had an aneurysm in her brainstem, which is ground zero of the brain. You don't survive that. It controls blood pressure, heartbeat, swallowing, breathing, all the stuff that you do without thinking. And it was the basilar tip. It was ground zero of the brainstem that blew up. I was reading my Bible and I came across John 10:10. And the page, they got this big on the page. "I have come that you may have life." That spoke to me. And I claimed that one. I held on to that. And anytime my faith would waver, I would go back to that touch point, that column, if you will, where I knew that God existed right there at that spot. And even though I was out here trying to deal with stuff, I could go back to that spot, grab a hold of home base, and then go back out to fight again. She's on a vent. She gets better and better. And we have to move her to a different hospital to get her off the vent. I have to get her out of ICU. So we go to a hospital next door called Select. And while she's at Select, they come to me and they say, "Mike," this is like a week into it, "Mike, we're getting a lot of blood in her urine and her stool. We got a problem, something's going on. And we want to do an x-ray." And I'm like, "An x-ray? Okay, go ahead and do an x-ray." I signed for it. And they come back and they said, "We found a patch of tissue in her large intestine this big around that is rotted due to the lack of blood flow." Remember the heart failure? And it's rotted, and it's bleeding inside of her. She's got internal bleeding. And tomorrow morning we want to do an MRI to see how to deal with it. And I called up Cliff. And I said, "Cliff, I need to tell you what's going on." He goes, "Tell me." I told Cliff what happened. He started laughing. And finally, he's laughing so hard, he throws the phone down. I can hear him knocking over furniture and banging on the walls. And he's like a little kid being tickled. Finally, he's like, Mike, that's the funniest thing I've heard. You know, the devil got whipped 2,000 years ago. Click. I didn't realize you could laugh at the devil. I mistakenly thought he was to be feared and respected. Not so. So the next morning, the doctors come to me ready to go do the MRI. And I told them, "Do the MRI, you will find nothing wrong." And they came back an hour and a half later and said, "Well, we couldn't find anything wrong and the bleeding has stopped." Actually, not tomorrow, Monday. And the next day, 2 days later was Sunday. I went into the basement with James and LaShawn's husband, I can't remember his name. There was 8 men, including me, down there. And we prayed for 5 minutes. Then the next morning at 7:30, I'm in Augusta with my blind wife. And we go into the little room and he takes his pictures. He's got his 10 eggs over here on a blueprint and on a light box. And he's got the doctor for 5 Points over here, got his stuff. And he's got this computer in the middle and he's looking all this stuff up and he's got this headset. And he's looking, he's back and forth and he's looking, he's typing stuff and he takes a little laser and he's looking inside her eyeballs. Finally, he flips the head up, turn her like, there's no detached retina. There's no way in the natural that she's with her granddaughter this day, 19 years later. This morning, we got a phone call from Leah, CeCe's daughter, saying that there was a time conflict with some different things, and is there any way that CeCe could help out with the granddaughter? And so she went over there at 2 o'clock to get that little girl out of school, 5-year-old girl out of school, and hang out with her until Leah got off of work. So, just being grandma. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, life is good out here in the country.